to latest episode of Talking Marijuana. Say what? Episode 13, Talking Marijuana. Check it.
This episode's bad luck.
No. This is a good number.
We're coming to you from the John Lovitz Vodcast studio in the John Lovitz Comedy Theater here at Universal City Walk. And we're happy to be here. Love being here. It's been a real fun ride so far. We're here at Talking Marijuana. We talk about all things marijuana, legislation, legalization, medical marijuana, silly stoner stories that pop up. I don't know. They're few and far between, of course, but we do hit them when they pop up in the news. And we're here with a guest today, and we're your hosts. I'm Barry Kramer. I am the patient operator of California Patients Alliance on Melrose here in Los Angeles. And with me is
Yami Bolaños. I'm patient operator for Pure Life Alternative Wellness Center and the president and founder of GLACA, the Greater Los Angeles Collectives Alliance, the sign of excellence in marijuana in the city of Los Angeles since 2006. And with us on the phone is...
Hello, everyone. I'm Don Duncan. I'm the California Director of Americans for Safe Access.
How are things in Sacramento, Don?
Things are great. I'm actually just back in Sacramento. Glad to be back after a week in Belize.
Yeah.
Lucky dog, you. And also joining us on the panel here is our pot enthusiast.
I want to do my own intros like you guys do. You're stealing my thunder, man.
It's the 13th, man. It's an unlucky show. I wasn't going to do it, and then I did it.
So now I just get to say, hi, I'm Dan Gabriel. I'm here, too.
He's a pot enthusiast.
Pot enthusiast.
And what he
layman.
never says, and I don't know why, but he is an amazing comedian. He brings joy to a lot of people, and we're happy to have him here on our panel for sure.
Blushing. I'm blushing.
Bring some joy. And our guest today is Aaron Justice.
Yes, hi. Thank you for having me. I'm the president of Buds and Roses Collective in Studio City on Ventura Boulevard, and then we are also a fully accredited GLACA dispensary, and I serve on the steering committee.
Yay.
Awesome.
Yes.
So welcome, everybody, to our Vodcast. We're going to hit some of the news stories of this week that have happened since the last time we sat in these chairs. Some good news. We get rarely good news. Most of the stories I think that I bring are mostly bad news about people not wanting to let people use their medicine and not wanting to legalize this very harmless herb. But today there was good news. There's forward motion in Maine. In Maine, we have post-traumatic stress disorder sufferers are now going to be able to qualify for medical marijuana. They were not before in Maine. And in Maine, unlike here in California, which we've all become very used to and sort of feel is the norm, but it's not in other states, it's very specific what you can use medical marijuana for. It's laid out in the legislation. And so to revise that legislation and add new symptoms to the list of qualifying symptoms is a legislative procedure. So we're really happy for post-traumatic stress disorder
People that are listening.
Yeah, you're really happy for them.
Well, we are. It's great.
Yeah.
We don't want them to suffer.
We're happy about
VA
this
and all that.
news because now they can legally do it. They've been doing it, taking medical marijuana, but they've risked incarceration and other things. And so that was a great thing in Maine, and we hope we're going to hear it in other states as well. One of the interesting things in the article that caught my eye was that efforts to expand this program to include more qualifying conditions will likely continue in Maine. The first draft of the proposed law would have allowed doctors to prescribe marijuana for any condition they deemed necessary.
That's how it should be.
But the Maine Medical Association opposed that, saying that expanding the program to virtually every condition could essentially legalize recreational marijuana use. Now, that's what happened here in California. We were the first to legislate, the first to put these laws on any books in the country. And our law says that it is good for cancer, for glaucoma, or for any condition that your physician deems necessary. It's made it murky here in California. I'm kind of not. I don't know where I fall on this. Don, maybe you want to join in on this, but it seems that the law should be clarified. And
Yes and no. I think California voters knew exactly what they were doing when they passed Proposition 215 and gave the broadest latitude because there wasn't a sufficient amount of science to discriminate very clearly, and we knew there would be conditions that cannabis helped that weren't articulated. And so the California voters chose a very broad law, whereas other voters in other states and lawmakers in other states choose a more narrow one. I think that represents just different approaches to marijuana. Obviously what works in California may not fly with voters or lawmakers on the East Coast. So I think that's what we see in California. And I want to say, I disagree. I take issue with the presumption that California's law is more commonly abused than not, because those people that the voters weren't thinking about, whether it be chronic pain or what have you, are still legal, legitimate patients. So, I'm actually very proud of California's broad law. What we need, of course, are greater regulations about how you grow it and sell it and all the other business.
Right, which has been huge in the news this week. Actually,
Yep.
my sort of subtitle for the news headlines this week was "The Devil's in the Details," because
It sure is.
now the shit is hitting the fan, and all these all these laws that people have voted for are coming to fruition. Come January 1st, we're going to have legal marijuana in 2 states and a regulatory system to distribute that. And I don't think anybody's ready for it.
I was just in one of those states. I was just in Washington over this last weekend, and I talked to a lot of people about legal marijuana there. I was like, "What's it like?" First of all, good for you. Way to vote, everybody.
Right.
And they all just have this sense of not knowing where it's gonna land. Like it's. Like they broke a lamp and their parents haven't come home
And
yet.
they haven't figured out how to put it back together again.
They're just everybody. It's not the party atmosphere that I thought it would be. It's a little more just. The law
confused?
says that, but we'll see.
Well,
I
they're
know,
going to see.
because we've heard a lot of stuff about Washington. The fact that it's taxed so highly, that people who live in Washington think that the taxes is going to keep it underground. Who wants to run a store or bring it up, to the streets when they have to pay 75% of tax on the medicine? And because of that, the comments have been that it's going to stay underground because there's no way that people are going to be able to handle pain as much as they have to with the law being what it is.
Well, we'll see when it comes.
But
Well,
you'll
yeah.
still be allowed to have a certain amount on your
personally,
person and not be arrested for just having that amount, right?
Where do you
Right.
get it?
I know, but
that's
it's
it.
yeah.
Well,
The
it's really,
details.
the devil's
I think
in the
Colorado has it
details,
more
yeah.
figured out, and Washington State is still a little confused because I think Colorado kind of ended how they were going to set everything up, where Washington State is still a little confused on how the store is going to look.
Colorado has a seed to sale sort of regulatory process in place for medical marijuana, and they have since they've had medical marijuana. It's a tracking system, and that's only part of what the regulatory system is going to have to cover in Colorado, the tracking of it. There's all other kinds of tentacles, and I think people don't really know about it yet because it's so brand new. We've never had laws dealing with marijuana, and marijuana is a plant. It's natural. There's so many variations of it. It's going to be very difficult to legislate marijuana. I'm interested to see how it's going to.
How do you regulate something
well,
anybody can grow in their yard?
Let's. I was gonna save this, but let's jump right into it because it's very topical about what we're talking about, which is the regulatory system. Colorado faces historic challenge in regulating marijuana stores, and I'm going to read a little bit of this article because it really laid it out quite perfectly. As Colorado prepares for the opening of historic recreational marijuana stores, state officials are preparing for something equally as unique, a regulatory challenge of almost maddening complexity. Consider the headaches, and they just list 3 of them here. Regulators must precisely audit the transaction of every pot store, even though those stores currently can't take credit cards and do business almost exclusively in slippery $10 and $20 bills.
Yeah.
A big problem, no banking. So you got all this problem. How do you keep tracking records? Second problem, they must track the inventory weight of every business down to the gram, even though the weight of the same amount of marijuana can fluctuate daily based on things as variable as humidity. So that's a huge problem. How do you legislate weather? I don't know. They must guard against both cash and marijuana leaking out of the legal market and into the black market, all the while the federal government watches over their shoulders. So, faced with challenges, these and others, marijuana regulators in Colorado stop short of guaranteeing an airtight system. But the Department of Revenue's Deputy Senior Director of Enforcement is confident the department will be able to catch most fraud. No control system is going to give you absolute assurance. It's going to give you reasonable assurance. That, I think, that goes across the board in every everything.
Sure, that's right.
It's nice to know that they're at least thinking that, and they're not thinking that it's an absolute. Colorado's recreational marijuana regulatory plan, as well as its revised plan for regulating medical marijuana dispensaries, will rely on two systems that dovetail together. The first is an inventory tracking system, and the second is a store sales tracking system. Together, this should allow the state to monitor marijuana from the grow room until it leaves the store's showroom. And they already have most of this in place. Their inventory tracking system is known as MITS, and it's intended to track the growth ratio, track the growth of radio frequency tagged marijuana plants.
Wow.
What?
Radio frequency.
Yeah.
The whole
radio
issue.
frequency tags have psychoactive effects? How does that go?
I don't
wish.
know. And they're harvested. All marijuana businesses are required to enter inventory data into this MITS system. And they say that right now they're starting the system with no data whatsoever, obviously. There is no data on this. But as they continue to gather data, they are going to be able to close in on the regulatory process there, because they'll know when you grow this, it should produce A and such and such. And then they'll track your inventory that way.
Variables in growing.
Well, the main issue is that there's still a black market.
Yeah.
Because if there wasn't a black market and it was regulated nationally, then we wouldn't have to worry about it going to states that aren't. So, we just have to further the laws, just like with alcohol or anything.
Right.
I mean, and that's the main
black
issue.
market,
Yeah, we're still like teetering. So they have it legal there. So many other states don't. That's the only reason that they would send it elsewhere.
But I mean, with alcohol's hard to make yourself. So this is an even harder issue because anybody can start.
I don't think back in the day it
they
was.
tag the trees, right? The bushes, the marijuana plants. They're going to tag those, and so whatever came from that plant, then they figure that the next time they plant it, it's going to be the same.
They are going to be gathering data, so they're not going to say, they're just not going to have one data point and say this is what you got the first time, so now you're expected to get that all the time. They're going to over time collect all the data and fall within certain parameters of how that plant grows. I think it's absolutely ridiculously
How when you're at the
impossible.
mall and you're holding a shirt that has one of those clips on it? From now on, every joint will have one of those clips on it.
Oh,
You're gonna take
wow,
out
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the other thing, like I know someone who has some dispensaries in Colorado, and they cannot produce enough for their patients. You know, so if they limit, they can't even keep up with that. So hopefully, if they limit it and they balance it out right, no one's going to consider doing anything illegal to risk their operation that they currently have by moving something out the back door or whatever.
Absolutely.
That would be
We're hoping that'll
But I
curb
mean,
that.
of course. But things like, okay, you're trimming and you take a couple buds and you dry them on the side, and it's like, so that doesn't count.
Wait, Yami.
Wait,
Well,
you're not
there's
trimming
nothing
for me.
They're going to be
So then
watching.
they're going to count everything.
You account
everything,
for
everything.
spillage.
They will.
Yeah.
You will have to
That
account
goes
for
under
that.
spillage.
Look, you're under camera, so they'll just review the 9 million tapes. And
Exactly. Everything
catch
is
you.
videotaped from seed to sale.
the way
There's
to
videotape
just make
on
all of your
everything.
employees do it naked.
Yeah,
That
that's how they do it in movies.
Yeah, like on New
I
Jack
think they have a
City.
TV show. You know what? I think we're going to take a break here and kind of get back on track.
All right.
And when we come back, we'll sort out our mess and continue on
God.
with this discussion. So we'll take a break and we'll see you on the other side.
Upcoming shows to the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Welcome to FYI. It's Dimitri Young here with Robert Fick.
Hey everybody, welcome to Talking Marijuana.
Hi, everybody. Crabman's Rock and Roll Revival featuring Frazier Smith is on the air, in your hair, and going out everywhere around the world.
I'm Gary Garver, live from the John Lovitz Comedy Club.
This is the John Lovitz Podcast Network.
Hi, John Lovitz here. It's time to put laughter back into your life. Check out the John Lovitz Comedy Club, located in the heart of Universal Studios City Walk, Los Angeles, not Orlando. For tickets, go to thejohnlovitzcomedyclub.com.
You are listening to the John Lovitz Podcast Network.
And welcome
This,
back
like,
to
pro
Talking
nudity
Marijuana.
blog.
We are live and on the air. Nice to see you all back with us. It's so great. We were discussing regulation from all the angles, how difficult it is going to be to regulate this weed. It grows many ways. It's like a whack-a-mole kind of thing, It's a weed. It grows. It has this tentacle that comes up. We take care of that tentacle, and then there's 12 others that have come up on the other side that we need to kind of figure out. And that's, again, kind of an overall theme for the articles this week. Yeah.
One benefit, I think, to California, even though we're behind right now and it's extremely stressful, and you see Arizona, Colorado, Washington, like, moving
Regulating.
forward. And we're not. The only good thing out of that is we have time to hopefully learn from their mistakes, because I feel like Colorado's over-regulated. Washington, they didn't have regulations till now. Los Angeles passed a voter initiative with almost no regulations and very little regulations. So hopefully we can look at what they've done there and then come up with a better system.
Right.
And
Well,
then be
it's-
the
I think
leaders
that
again.
they have what they have because they've learned from California's
Yeah,
mistakes.
I
they
believe
have.
that as
And
well.
they're
that people
standing
have
on
learned
our
from us.
They have,
shoulders.
and now we can learn from them, though. Yeah,
and that's
definitely.
proven just through that article that we read from Maine, where the Maine Medical Association said, no, you can't open this up to every
Yeah.
single thing.
Ailment.
I would like to
hope
see
that it
the
would-
list of ailments that are actually.
Well,
in Maine.
that's a whole sort of Pandora's box on itself, because, as Don said, I mean, marijuana works for many ailments.
Well, and
it's
also-
a palliative that works for
Yeah.
across the board almost. So
Yeah,
it works
I don't like lists. I think when you
Me
start
neither.
limiting conditions,
Right.
you're cutting people out unnecessarily. And I get where they're coming from, and they fear abuse. But the truth is, the kind of abuse that they're fearing can be dealt with in other ways without cutting off a doctor and saying, okay, you're the doctor, but this condition's off limits. Let the doctor decide.
Right, but that is something that was learned through California as far as the nation is concerned. All medical marijuana legislation that's come after California has really been tied to specific conditions. And
Right, but
because they said, California just said,
Abusing it.
for whatever your doctor thinks it's good for.
You know what? I'll tell you where that came from partially is focus groups, because many of the state initiatives that came after California were not grassroots initiated. They were initiated by political organizations, advocacy organizations, and they were based on focus groups. And so they went out and they did polling, and they tried to find the content of the initiative that would have the highest support amongst voters. And obviously most people think, oh yeah, let's crack down, let's rein it in. And so, having that kind of tight control by limiting it to 3 or 4 or 5 conditions or
Right.
whatever you have, polls very well with voters, because they think, yeah, nobody will abuse that. But that's not necessarily good policy. It's just popular policy. So I think we should be aware of that. We say, all the states are doing it. Well, they're all doing it because most of those initiatives were written by lawyers and consultants looking at the results of polls and focus groups.
Right.
So we shouldn't read too much into that.
The good thing is that they're opening it up. I mean,
Yeah,
they
now they're
started one
expanding.
way, but now
Yeah.
they're expanding. So at least
Sure.
they're learning that there's other conditions that should be treated or can be treated.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah, if you
that's
have
a
to
good
have
thing.
a list of conditions, there definitely has to be a way to expand it.
And hopefully that was the plan. That's what was intended. Start small and then go from there. And
Add
even,
conditions.
even aspirin kills, 500 people a year. So if people can get that for any ailment, the stuff your doctor prescribes hurts people, kills people, all pharmacies. This is so much
Peanuts
safer.
kill hundreds of people a year.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
peanuts.
cannabis is so much safer. If your doctor, the doctors here are like, hey, does this help you? Sure, go ahead and try it, because they know that it's harmless compared to anything else they could try to tell you to use. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, the whole question of abuse of marijuana rankles me a little bit. It can be abused, of course. There's definitions of that word abuse that you can use, but the definition that I think most people are thinking when they say people are abusing marijuana is that, we're all sitting in our homes and we're like, constantly
Forget
having
work.
joints. We forgot our lives, and and that just is so ridiculously full of.
Because
I've
it's
never
usually like
worked
this with the remote control when people are ruining their lives and they're just watching TV.
Right.
I have to tell you that I
Yeah.
haven't
I'm
worked
not
as
doing
hard.
anything.
Yeah, you don't have to have a joint to watch the talk.
That's right.
And-
I've worked harder now in my life than I ever have since I got
Yeah.
into this movement. I didn't work like I work now. I didn't used to work like I work now. I work every day, all day now.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Just have breaks.
energetic.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, the stereotypical image of the stoner is evolving. It's changing, and the more people know other people that do smoke, the more that breaks down, and it's not all just Bill and Ted. Everybody
Yeah.
just thinks of
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
the
No,
Bill
Cheech
and
Chong,
yeah,
Bill and Ted,
Our
absolutely.
opposition, at least, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Getting back to our discussion of Colorado and the regulatory system there, this article really took a pretty in-depth look at at the problems that they're having, and I mentioned some of those in the earlier segment, and also they're dealing with fraud. They're going to open up basically retail marijuana stores.
Can they bank there yet?
They cannot bank. No one can bank. It sounded to me as if Bank of America was trying to
stepping
come
up,
on
yeah.
board to step up for Washington State. They were happy to be the Washington State bank for marijuana.
That's nice and simple.
Well, of course, they were the first bank to refuse anybody
close
in this
this down,
industry to a bank account. But now they're ready to come to the table because the
Which is
feds are
great.
going to allow it. And as
Yeah.
soon as the feds said okay, they came back to the table. So I guess ultimately that's a good thing.
Yeah,
And I
but
hope
forget
that-
about the
is a
medical
good
people.
thing.
They're all over the
Uh,
adult use.
Yeah,
It's
they're
like-
about adult use.
Yeah, and
That's
it's
what
like,
they
wait,
want.
what about us? We're like you would think the medical would get the compassion first.
I think in the years to come, we're going to get a lot of what about us as far as medical patients.
Yeah, I'm afraid that
and
phenomena is just beginning.
Because
It's the second federal law, right? First, they sort of gave a nod to banking, and now we're seeing the asset forfeiture charges in Orange County dropped. So
That
we
was
can get back to that
great
later.
That was
news.
really
That was
We are
good
really
news.
inching towards federal progress. It's not all
Yes.
bad news on the federal level.
Do you want to elaborate
Correct.
on what happened in OC since you brought it up here?
Sure,
we're kind
yeah.
of flying around topics.
Just this past week, we got news that the federal government, which is, they've been going around in California and then sometimes in other states, filing lawsuits against property owners who rent to medical cannabis businesses. And in Orange County, they actually did a $27 buy on a business and then filed a forfeiture worth over $1 million on a property in Orange County. Over a $27 buy. The landlord evicted the tenant, but they refused to drop the forfeiture case. And so there's been a big controversy. They got some bad press around it and just agreed to drop this case, I believe, out of Anaheim in Orange County, and a second case with similar circumstances as well in Orange County. So that's actually a little ray of hope, too, to see that the federal government is sort of backing off the most draconian thing they can do because they have the legal authority to do this. They can take property away if they want to.
Yeah.
And they
And
do.
so the fact that they're appear to be sort of backing off to save face, I think is very, very encouraging.
Do we see that anywhere else in the country?
No. This is the first time we've seen this, so I'm optimistic that this is a trend for the future.
Cool.
Don, have you heard anything about the DOJ not sending out letters anymore? I heard that
I have
they were.
not heard that, although we haven't seen any DOJ letters lately, so
I
let's
heard
hope
that.
that keeps up.
I heard they were. They didn't want to do it anymore.
They don't want to send
They
out.
may not. I think that one of the I'm just going to speculate for a minute. I think one of the phenomena that we're seeing is that the Obama administration may have overplayed its hand on medical cannabis here, and I think they've been getting more flack than they thought that they would get. So hopefully we're seeing sort of a retreat now following the Cole memo from some of their most egregious abuses. So I hope that's the case.
If that's true, what happened to the Supreme Court? How did they didn't get the memo?
Well, remember, the Supreme Court's not part of the administration. That's a separate branch of government.
Yeah,
so,
but don't they hear the news?
Yeah, believe me, I have plenty to say on that topic when it's time.
They're
Yeah,
old guys.
exactly.
They don't get the news. Okay, back to Colorado. One of the points I wanted to get to in this was that the state representative, a Democrat who helped write the new laws for the marijuana stores, said Colorado is putting marijuana stores on the honor system in some respects. So already I think they have some bad problems with their legislation if they're putting it on the honor system. Not to disparage anybody in this industry, but the 4 people that are decent or 5 people are sitting around this table. I'm kidding.
Most people are decent.
Those people are very
The good thing
decent.
about regulations is they keep honest people honest.
So
right?
he expected regulators to be diligent in checking on stores and asking questions about discrepancies, as much to keep the pot out of the black market, like you were speaking of, Aaron, as to make sure the state is getting what it's owed in taxes. The last thing we want is tax cheats. So when I read that, I thought, okay, here we go.
They want their cut.
They want the regulation tight so that they can collect all the pennies
It's
that
all
are due
money
to
driven.
them.
Any progress is going to be
Their
money
minds were
driven.
changed just like that.
I mean,
and as soon as
That's
that
the only
came
reason
in,
their minds have changed is because they've seen, the potential that, the tax revenue that this, movement has the potential to make. That's the only reason why people, they understand that it's medicine too, but most people that are going with this is because they know they can collect taxes, like in Colorado, like in Washington.
Right.
And they
That's
know
the main
and
reason.
they hope to get reelected.
Right. No, absolutely. Also in Colorado, in Denver, there's problems regulating. In Denver, they've had a couple of things, one in Denver, one in Boulder, where they gave out, we've talked about this on the show in the past, but they gave out free joints to get people to be aware of the taxes that were being levied against marijuana. Recreational marijuana.
Did the side of the joint explain all of that?
It did.
in
You had to
tiny
read it
little-
really, really tiny.
Okay.
I needed my glasses, of course. But anything free, I'll go to get. So in Denver, they are facing strong opposition from marijuana advocates. Denver City Council committee postponed a vote on a bill to use or possess pot in city parks, mountain parks, recreational facilities, and the 16th Street Mall. This is in Denver. So,
I guess I can understand the
basically,
law.
they don't want any consumption of public consumption of marijuana. But either it's
Colorado-
legal or it's not legal.
Yeah.
There's,
I don't want public consumption of cigarettes. I mean, no offense to anybody that smokes cigarettes, but that gets blown in your face. It's
right. Marijuana
unpleasant.
advocates
I
are
mean-
calling this proposal blatantly
But not in
unconstitutional.
parks is huge because Colorado, aside from
All parks.
Boulder and Denver, is a big park. It's just
and a big mountain.
yeah.
It absolutely is. So again, just the details of regulating. They've passed legal marijuana. It's legal now. Now there's all the minutia of what do we do with this substance that's now going to be in our culture. How do we
It's
regulate
legal,
it?
but make sure we don't see it because
Yeah.
that's illegal.
Oh, they're so scared of it. They're
Something
so
like that.
scared of it.
Yeah.
And of course, the here locally, regulations and the devil in the details again kind of hit home this week. We had a wonderful article in the Los Angeles Times. So awesome. I opened the paper in the morning. It says LA City Attorney moves to shut down illegal marijuana dispensaries.
Now we're like, yay.
Now, here in Los Angeles, we have probably over 1,000 dispensaries. And God bless our city attorney. He is shutting down 38 of those dispensaries.
He's trying.
I don't know if anybody can tell the sarcasm that's in my voice.
Wait, no, I
but
wasn't getting it. Could you
It's
be a little
coming.
bit
It's
more
coming.
facetious?
Well,
38 stores they are shutting them down with criminal prosecutions.
Well, we had Studio City Neighborhood Council meeting and blessed them because they're the most, I think, proactive in the city. I love it. And they had the deputy city attorney there prosecuting the medical cannabis cases in North Hollywood, Studio City, and there's hundreds in North Hollywood. And she was very nice. She seemed to have our back. And there was a whole room full of people, and we said, okay, so what have you done? And she said, well, we filed 3 cases. And that's all. We don't have the manpower, we don't have the people, so we're on it. We got three cases filed.
3
And it
cases
was
filed.
like,
They have 90 illegal collectives in North Hollywood, correct?
Or more.
90,
or more.
yeah.
Wow.
And they haven't been able to close down
And now
not even one of
a
them.
lot of them have signs in their windows saying
We're legal.
Decompliant,
Yeah.
decompliant.
that won't
That's the
work,
name
but it's
of
a good
some-
try.
So advocates
Well, so,
advocates here in Los Angeles have spent over $1 million,
Dollars.
a million and maybe close to $1.5 million to pass this law, Measure D, that would close down the excessive amount of
Illegal
shops,
dispensaries.
illegal dispensaries, and 3 have been filed against, 38 are being considered. And in the meantime, we have dispensaries opening up all over the city, brand new ones, and the ones that are shut down by our great city attorney, and he's doing such a good job, half of those have moved and opened up somewhere else.
Yeah.
With no
They
enforcement.
won't acknowledge this. We're running up to our break here, so we're going to take a break. Calm down a little bit. I'm going to try and calm my body down.
How do we
and when
do that?
Come back, I don't know. We don't have a long enough break.
That's a medicine, baby?
We'll see you on the other side of the break, everybody.
It's okay, there's an illegal dispensary.
This is the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Upcoming shows to the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Welcome to FYI. It's Dimitri Young here with Robert Fick.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Talking Marijuana.
Hi, everybody. Crabman's Rock and Roll Revival featuring Frazier Smith is on the air, in your hair, and going out everywhere around the world.
I'm Gary Garver, live from the John Lovitz Comedy Club.
This is the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Hi, John Lovitz here. It's time to put laughter back into your life. Check out the John Lovitz Comedy Club, located in the heart of Universal Studios City Walk, Los Angeles, not Orlando. For tickets, go to thejohnlovitzcomedyclub.com.
You are listening to the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
And welcome back. We are continuing to talk about marijuana here at the John Lovitz Comedy Theater in Universal Studios. So Don, you're a little on a time restraint, so we're going to talk to you about some topics that you have some info for us on. One is the Supreme Court that ASA has been working to reschedule marijuana, reschedule the drug. So you want to give us an update on that?
Right,
What's happened
yeah,
this
and I
week?
know both of our listeners are up to date on this story, but just in case
Pay attention,
someone
you
else
two.
hasn't heard it, we joined a rescheduling petition 10 years ago. A rescheduling petition is an administrative way to change the classification of a drug under federal law. So 10 years ago, Americans for Safe Access joined the campaign to reschedule cannabis and tried to get the federal government to change the classification of medical cannabis under federal law to acknowledge its medical value. Right now, cannabis is considered more dangerous than cocaine and heroin and methamphetamines. It's actually in a higher, more severe class of drugs. And so that campaign to reschedule cannabis went on for 9 years with no response. We successfully sued and forced a response. And of course, they denied our petition and said, no, you can't reschedule cannabis. And so we filed a lawsuit in federal court last year. That resulted in the first ever evidentiary, well, I shouldn't say the first ever, the first evidentiary hearings before the Supreme Court on the medical value of cannabis in 20 years. So it was really a historic moment. A lot of us went out to Washington, D.C., and were there for the arguments, and it was just really a wonderful moment. And we had very high hopes for that, but we also knew that the Supreme Court doesn't really take very many appeals, and they don't. And if they do, they typically are very conservative in their standing. And we were very disappointed to learn this past week that the U.S. Supreme Court will not hear an appeal from our appellate court case on the rescheduling of cannabis. And so the appellate court decision to deny our rescheduling petition is going to stand for the time being. Wow. So that's a big disappointment, but not terribly
unexpected.
It's not unexpected, and it was always a possibility.
Can anyone else sue to hear it again, or this is just now it's a dead issue?
The particular line of reasoning that we used is probably a dead issue. The issue, basically saying your own scientific evidence shows some medical value, ergo you must reclassify. And even though that's a very rational argument, the appellate court decision rejects it. and says that basically what the DEA argued at the appellate court was that there are clinical trials underway and they're not over, and so it's premature. So the avenue forward in the courts is to wait for the clinical trials to finish and then reinitiate this legal action and say, okay, now the clinical trials show medical benefit for cannabis, medical use. Now we need to reschedule. So it's not a dead end. It's just another really long delay. Now, the way I look at this, of course, is that the Supreme Court is really putting the ball back in the court of Congress and saying, we're not ready to rule on this issue. We're not going to consider it. Now, remember, the Supreme Court didn't deny the petition. They just decided not to hear it. They're just not going to take up the case. So now they're basically saying to Congress, okay, Congress, the ball's back in your court. So as soon as Congress gets their shutdown and debt ceiling nonsense.
Oh, yeah, because they've been so productive on so many important issues to the American people. This, I'm sure, is big in there.
They're going to fix it.
Yeah, I know we don't have high hopes, but maybe they could avoid doing their job on the budget by taking up the issue of medical cannabis. So, obviously there have been efforts afoot in Congress, including the States' Rights to Medical Cannabis Act that we're supporting in Congress right now. So I don't want folks to see it as a dead end, although it certainly is a huge disappointment to see the Supreme Court just not even bothering to review the case. So, but they have that choice, they have that discretion, and so be it. So for the time being, this particular petition, this 10-year-old, almost 11-year-old petition now, this one's done. But that doesn't mean that after the clinical trials are finished, that we can't come back. One of the things that's been frustrating in this for me, though, is that they keep moving the bar, the bar for what accepted medical value is. And at the appellate court hearings in Washington, D.C., they actually upped the ante and said it's not enough that there be some evidence of medical value. There need to be 3-phase clinical trials that are finished and conclusive and agree with one another. It's like, well, we don't have that same standard for heart medications or stroke medications or chemotherapy, but apparently only for cannabis. So this is just another example of how the stigma and bias associated with cannabis can influence lawmakers and courts. Contrary to what we're taught in civics lessons, Supreme Court justices and even appellate court judges are not immune to public opinion and bias and sentiment. And so, I think we're seeing a lot of that reflected here.
Do you think that with the tidal wave of medical marijuana positive stories that have been coming out for 6 months to a year now, I mean, they've been very prevalent in the press. Do you think that with that kind of public awareness and knowledge that we might move quicker to a point where the government will say, yes, there is some medical value? Obviously, it's being done in 24 states. There's medical marijuana in 24 states of our.
Is it 24?
Yeah, that's
right. Is it 20 or 24?
20. But the only way
that we don't know anymore. That's awesome. But to answer your question, yes, I do think it matters. It's not as if next year the court will be like, oh, okay, public sentiment's on their side. But I do think there's something going on with this. I think there's sort of a momentum building. I don't want to use the buzzword tipping point, but there's a momentum happening in the media and in public sentiment. But we have to remember, our elected officials are always way behind the people on issues like this. So
and the Supreme Court is even further behind on that.
Yes, remember, these are a bunch of old dudes who've been, they grew up in a very different era than we live in today. And so, I talked once before on the podcast about the Senate, and, the average senator is in his 70s, and he's a white male. And so, I don't mean to cast any dispersions on the elderly, except to say that they grew up in a different world of different values. And I think
they mainly just want kids off their lawn.
Get off my constitutional lawn. I'm disappointed, but it's not the end of the battle. It's just a defeat along the way. So we'll regroup, we'll dust ourselves off, and we'll hit the halls of Congress in 2014 and try to get some legislation passed. But I think it's important that people remember about that turning sentiment. It's like it's fine for us all to agree amongst ourselves outside the Beltway that marijuana is medicine and cannabis isn't that harmful and the law should change. But we've got to be shouting that inside the Beltway, too. We can't, and, we send out action alerts. There are call-in days and lobby days. We got to pack those things and really make an impact because we're really competing with a lot of attention. And I know when there are climate change action alerts, when there are marriage equality action alerts, when other hot-button issues that have national attention focused at them, there are thousands and hundreds of thousands and sometimes millions of people who participate in those grassroots campaigns. We need those numbers.
That's what we need.
We joke
grow
about
our
our two
army.
listeners, but folks listening to this should make it a priority to participate. It really does matter when there's a national action alert on medical marijuana and 5,000 people participate, and there's an action alert on climate change and 500,000 people participate.
Right.
Obviously, one's going to be more effective than the other.
Absolutely.
So we've got to have those numbers. We've got to blow up and get big.
Yep.
We do.
Speaking of numbers, there was an article that said that marijuana has been mentioned in 1,730 pieces of state legislation this year, way more than I forget. So far this year, 730. According to this company that checks on that, cocaine got 723 mentions, peyote 168, and hemp got 117. So they're like 10 times more legislative actions going on.
Is this
Well,
pro
I would
or
call it a peyote lobby.
We don't know. They don't define whether they're pro or
mentioned. It was just mentioned.
It's just mentioned in the legislation.
I think the peyote lobby's got to really step up to the plate.
Yeah.
Here. They're falling far behind.
Yeah, they do.
I'll call Jim when I get done with this. And Jim, get that peyote going.
So
and
Don-
in
go ahead.
that article, I'm just gonna see
go
if I
ahead.
can get you guys on this. It says for the curious, the 24 states that allow. They say they allow, so maybe it's not legal, and that's why what their thing is. But they say 24 states allow medical marijuana, and they list the 24 states, and they also say that Washington D.C. has Washington D.C. legalized it as well. So 24 that allow for medical marijuana at this point. That's almost half our country.
Yeah.
We're moving in a good direction.
Yeah,
now.
we are.
Definitely.
We're moving.
Definitely.
I wish that people would wake up, though, a little bit. All those ignorant men on the Supreme Court and all the old men in
They're in the
Congress.
70s. We don't know
We
who.
need to
Let me
lighten
say
them a
this
little bit.
to the listeners who always say, "Oh, it doesn't matter who you vote for president."
Oh, it
It's all the
does
same.
matter.
The president nominates those Supreme Court justices. They're ratified in the Senate, and it totally matters who you vote for because when we let conservatives control branches of government, they are going to get a chance to put their people on the Supreme Court. And when we have liberals, they will put their people on the Supreme Court. So if you want medical cannabis to fare better in the court system, we need Democratic presidents, Democratic senators.
So, Don, you think Jose Gutierrez would have done better if he'd had a Democratic judge that wasn't
Well,
a
I don't
federal
know.
judge?
Well, let's explain to our listeners who Jose Gutierrez is and what his
Yami's
situation
asking
is.
about a friend of mine and a medical cannabis activist, Jose Gutierrez, who has been active in medical cannabis for years up in Oakland, California, and the surrounding areas. Great guy. He and his wife Sarah have just been knee deep in the movement for medical cannabis since the very earliest days. And Jose was out protesting when the federal government came in and shut down Oaksterdam University. They raided this school that was teaching people how to participate in the cannabis industry, in the medical cannabis industry. It was a little bit of payback. You guys might remember that the operator of Oaksterdam University, Richard Lee, was the chief proponent and financier for Proposition 19 to legalize medical cannabis in California a couple of years ago. And so most people see the raid at his university as payback because obviously, it's a school and not a dispensary or narcotics trafficking operation. It was a school. And so they raided it, and Jose Gutierrez, along with hundreds of other supporters, poured into the streets of Oakland to protest. And there's this wonderful video that was never allowed in court, for God knows why, that shows exactly what happened. Jose was up on the front lines. He was chanting. He was showing his support and standing right up to the face-to-face with the police officers, because that's how it goes on a protest. When you speak your truth to power, you go face-to-face and toe-to-toe with the police department. But nobody was being violent. They were speaking their mind. They were speaking it loudly, and they were being very clear, but they were not being violent. And as sometimes happens in a crowd, the crowd surged forward, and somebody pushed Jose, and he fell over. And he fell over onto a police officer. And when that happened, the other officers pulled out the batons and frankly just beat the shit out of him right there on camera. And they beat him and brutalized him, and then they arrested him and prosecuted him for assaulting a police officer because he got pushed over and landed on a police officer. So after beating him on the street, in public, on tape, then they, of course, took him in and prosecuted him for assaulting a police officer. And unbelievably, 35 eyewitnesses were denied the opportunity to testify. The videotape was declared illegal and not able to be brought into court. And Jose was convicted a couple of weeks ago of assaulting a police officer because he fell down at a protest. And he's facing the maximum sentence he's facing is 12 years in prison for assaulting a police officer.
How crazy is
it's really
that?
just an egregious situation. We never thought this would happen, and he's coming up in sentencing in December, I think. And this could be a horrible tragedy. They have children. It's a family. And this wasn't a guy, again, he wasn't out shooting people. He wasn't beating people. He wasn't doing anything.
Yeah, this is you or me going to a protest to stand up for our rights.
It's a threat to America. All Americans should be upset. I mean,
Yeah,
he's
absolutely.
protesting, and that's what you get for protesting.
Yeah.
And everyone knows what the
crazy.
surge of a crowd can do, and that you can
Next
be.
week we're gonna focus on Jose's story.
He's
His
gonna
lawyer
be on
will
the
be
show,
here.
right?
Yeah,
We're gonna get that
so
story
we'll be
done.
able
So
to
hope people
inform
check it
all
out.
of America, all of our 2 listeners in America, about what a travesty of justice that was. It's horrible what they've done to him and his family.
And some people suggest, I'm not much of a conspiracy theorist, but this does ring true. Somebody has suggested that with all the evidence of police brutality and inappropriate behavior here, that it was necessary to prosecute Jose to forestall a civil suit.
Exactly.
Of course, Jose is suing, but they said the idea that he was convicted of assaulting an officer will make his civil suit much more difficult. And so it looks like maybe the courts and the police department are circling their wagons a little bit and trying to mitigate their losses on a
Kind
civil
of
suit.
sucks when the people who are supposed to be law and order are the
The ones
actual
attacking.
criminals.
Yes.
They're the criminals.
They're the criminals.
They should take
they
it
did
personal.
something totally illegal
I mean-
to this man, and he is now going to suffer for it. And they did criminal
were
activity
wrong.
on him, and it happens every day, and it's really it's quite a shame.
Yeah, Jose, of course, is not the first to suffer this sort of thing at a protest. It happens. I have good friends who have been grievously injured at protests. But I do want to remind people that most protests are very safe, and the best thing you can do to protect yourself at a protest is never instigate any physical contact with a police officer. Jose didn't instigate it. He was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. But never do that. Don't reach out and grab them. Don't push them. Don't do anything to physically provoke a police officer.
It was probably an undercover cop behind him pushing him.
The video shows the whole thing. The video's great.
Which I think we'll have
Too bad
next
that
we'll
week
have
as
some
well.
next
We're going to have the video. We're gonna take a break. Don, do we need to say goodbye to you now? Or?
Yeah, I'm going to take off. I've got to run out and take another meeting, but I will be back with you guys next week.
Awesome. Thanks
All right.
for
Sweet
joining
baby.
us on the
Okay.
conversation, and we'll see you later. And we'll
All
be
right.
back right after this pause station identification.
You are listening to the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Upcoming shows to the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Welcome to FY. It's Dimitri Young here with Robert Fick. Hey everybody, welcome to Talking Marijuana.
Hi, everybody. Crabman's Rock and Roll Revival featuring Frazier Smith is on the air, in your hair, and going out everywhere around the world.
I'm Gary Garver, live from the John Lovitz Comedy Club.
This is the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Hi, John Lovitz here. It's time to put laughter back into your life. Check out the John Lovitz Comedy Club, located in the heart of Universal Studios City Walk, Los Angeles, not Orlando. For tickets, go to thejohnlovitzcomedyclub.com.
You are listening to the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
And we are back with some more Talking Marijuana. We were pretty steamed up over that break about Jose Gutierrez. Again, we are going to be talking in our next show either with Jose and his lawyers or just his lawyers. Jose might be calling in. I think we have this video that was shot, and we'll try and show that. We know there's more than 2 of you out there, and we would hope that you guys would be our saviors and pass our links along to your social media, to your friends. Let them know that we are talking about marijuana and what's going on. I know we're not solving problems here, but we do get the issues out, and we're happy
We're proposing solutions.
that you join the conversation and
information.
share the conversation with your friends and people that might be interested. Some other good news that came up this week, though, is we had our first hemp crop
Yes,
that
in
was
Colorado.
harvested in the United States of
America, yeah.
since
the 40s,
since the
40s.
40s or 30s or 40s.
when the government mandated it. But
It's an illegal crop, but this guy that grew it said, somebody's got to be first, and I'm ready to go. He grew it in Colorado, where it is legal now to have marijuana and to grow marijuana. And for those of you that might be somewhat confused, there is a difference between hemp and marijuana. Hemp is an inactive, minuscule amount of active ingredient of the THC that we find so prevalent in marijuana is barely traceable, literally barely traceable in hemp. But they got put together back in the day.
But it's one of the main reasons marijuana is illegal because of hemp.
Yeah, because that's the whole reason marijuana is illegal. Because they.
Well, that's a long history.
It makes faster paper.
Right. That's a long history. It is why marijuana and hemp are illegal and considered, the worst of the worst of the worst. And it's all about business and the almighty dollar and who can make more money with what substance, paper or hemp. That's an old fight. Happened way back in the Industrial Revolution, and it still reverberates today.
Go ahead.
No.
Well, did you guys hear the story about Iowa or Ohio, who said that mothers there are fighting to get the whole plant cannabis extract oil, and that legislators said they may not even have, and some conservatives are behind it to get the oil for the parents with kids without changing any laws. They said they could just raise the amount of THC that as long as it's 0.5 or lower, that they don't have to legalize cannabis and they can start importing this oil in. And I'm sure it was sparked off by the Sanjay Gupta with the kids with seizures.
That was a great sparking point.
And if this hemp gets going, it can make the CBD with low THC.
The federal government imports $200,000 worth of hemp paper for to write in their the Natural Archives.
Yeah, the Constitution is written on hemp.
But today's paper.
The things they do today, they import hemp paper.
They import hemp paper to put it in the National Archives with what's going on in the government.
Overseas. I mean, that's
so they're importing it. The federal government is importing it from Canada already. There's such a bunch of hypocrites. It's just crazy to me. And hemp's the most renewable resource that we have.
Yeah.
It's just so ridiculous that they wouldn't let hemp grow in this country. We would be making so much money. We wouldn't have to.
And it can make these oils too.
Yes.
Hemp is a mild-mannered sister of marijuana, springing from the same tall, leafy plant family. Although it's often mistaken for its more potent sibling, hemp has only a tiny trace of buzzworthy chemical THC found in marijuana. Highly marketable hemp seeds, roots, stalks, fibers, and oil are used for products including soap, clothing, construction materials, and a company in Boulder even sells ice cream. So
don't forget uncomfortable clothing.
It's not uncomfortable. It's not uncomfortable clothing. It's only uncomfortable until you wash it a few dozen times, and then it's going to last forever. Hemp lasts longer. That's why it's such a great material.
Yeah.
It's just a stronger
renewable material.
And we have a huge problem with our farmers. Our farmers are
Yeah,
going out of
exactly.
business. We're losing family farms, everything, becoming these big, huge, because they don't have crops that they can grow. This is a crop. It's a weed. It grows. You don't need
all the pesticides
and stuff. You can grow it and use all of the whole plant, for so many things. It's ridiculous.
And this gentleman in Colorado had buyers from all over the United States wanting to buy his little
I think
crop.
Dr. Bronner's imports $80 million a year in hemp from other countries.
He's one of the
buyers.
buyers.
I bet he is.
Yeah,
they're
he's one of the buyers.
Great supporter. Buy Dr. Bronner's products. Definitely.
Yeah, that's a crazy thing. It's been That's been crazy since I got into this industry, and just it doesn't make sense if they're two different. They're not different plants because they come from the same family, but if they are totally separable by saying one has psychoactive properties and one does not. Why illegalize something that can bring so much revenue?
It's like arresting me because my brother, because you want to arrest my brother.
Well, the thing is, it was about money.
Kind of hard to tell you guys apart.
Yeah, we'll just take both of you.
Now it's about ignorance.
Now it's about ignorance. It was about money back in the day when Mr.
Well, then it was
got into the
paper or
game.
hemp. Paper or hemp. What's going to win? Well, paper won. Okay, so good. Paper's won.
Yeah.
But you know what? We have
new
lots
day.
of alternative.
And we're out of trees. We're running out of trees.
Yeah, that was
Synthetics
the
were
industrial
popular
revolution.
then. I mean, people wanted synthetic fake things, and now people want more natural things.
Absolutely.
So
That's
it's time
changed.
for
Our
hemp.
culture has totally changed, and we just don't change with it, and our laws are impossible to change with it. And the way that our politicians look at this, to look at it strictly in a dollar and cents way or votes. The fact that our politicians spend so much of their time trying to get reelected into these positions.
How many votes do you think Mr. Fuhrer is going to get by all the dispensaries that he closed in Los Angeles?
Well, he's probably not going to get a lot, but who's the next guy? The next guy's going to be just as bad. We got Fuhrer, this guy was voted in because we thought the guy before him was bad, who we all voted for because we thought he would be good. It's a vicious cycle.
It is.
And I know everyone's frustrated with politicians these days.
Yeah.
It's easy people to gang up on, but they're so ridiculous.
Yeah.
You want to talk realistically about a problem in Los Angeles. We have over 1,000 dispensaries. I'm so glad, honestly glad, that our new district attorney, our new city attorney, wants to attack this problem. But he can't do it by lying to himself and not looking at the whole picture. If he's going to come out and on all of the articles and in all of the interviews say that we're being successful, we've started to close down and it's going to be a new day in Los Angeles, without recognizing that the people that they're closing are reopening, and not only are those people reopening, but others.
Other people are reopening.
Just yesterday, I got an email from another operator who said a place opened up 600 feet from where he operates in Venice. It's ridiculous for the city to be saying that they've got a handle on this, or to even think they have a handle on this when they don't, and they're not telling the whole story to everybody, and so then it gets out that they're doing their job, but they're not doing their job.
And you know what? They need to go after.
This is law.
Realtors and not go after them, but we talked about this at neighborhood council.
To educate
realtors
them.
and landlords, because realtors are still taking post ICOs to locations, and they're supposed to have ethics, and they're supposed to follow the rules, and that's who we need to talk
Realtors
to.
don't have ethics. Are you crazy?
Come on, they take a test, and they.
Oh, man.
Well, everybody, it's about making a buck in LA.
But realtors do have, they're supposed to follow ethics and laws, otherwise you can lose your license. And I think the city needs to make it clear, these are legal, these are illegal, and then also, really go at the landlords. And the deputy city attorney said this to us, which was really nice. A guy that owns another pre-ICO in Studio City asked her, well, I don't want to move, I have to move to be compliant, but my current landlord says he's going to rent to an illegal dispensary the moment I move out. And to hear this from the deputy city attorney was nice. She said, what's your landlord's number? What's his address? I'll call him myself. I'll send him a letter. And if he does re-rent, we have that in file that we already warned him. And she said, I'll do that for you, Buds and Roses, also. So, I mean, if they do things like that, those are practical. Maybe they will help.
That is good.
Things.
And,
Glocka's working with the city attorney's office in the city as well, also, to organize a symposium for real estate.
I'm being sarcastic and have been this whole podcast, but I do hope and wish success to them. I just, as a citizen of Los Angeles, I sure haven't seen it. And when I hear them moving around the issue and trying to tout themselves as doing something without facing that there's a real problem that they need to figure out. Again, the devil's in the details of how do you follow through with the regulations that are voted for.
It's like they're just doing enough to prove to you they're doing something.
Correct.
Well, they haven't proved that much to me.
Yeah.
They haven't. There's dispensaries opening up around me after the elections. Nobody's closing, and there's no spots to be found.
And those people are way down on the priority
list.
Yeah.
The Measure M tax money that the legal or that the collectives have paid into, they need to use that money, and it just has to be used for enforcement.
Before we go, we only have a few minutes left. I'm just going to tap on one story that was a dope of the week. I think we missed them last week, but this week we're going to nail this. This guy, let's see. I'm trying to. I think I may have lost the article to tell you the truth, but oh no, here it is. So this was in here in Riverside County. Mm-hmm. The headline is "Autistic Teen Tricked into Buying Weed for Undercover Cop." So they needed to go into this school and find out where the marijuana and stuff was coming from, and this undercover cop over 60 times asked this friend, his only friend, an autistic kid who had no other friends. So this cop became his kind of friend and said, hey, can you get me pot? 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 Please get me pot. I know you can get me pot. I know you. And finally the kid broke down and got him a little bit of pot. He's been expelled from school. He was arrested. He spent 48 hours in jail. This is shameful.
It's entrapment.
This is totally
Major.
entrapment, and I hope that this undercover cop and that whole police department get fined and
They're paying him money to do that. To
What is
waste.
the dope of the week?
Well, that's a dope of the week
That's
for
a dope
sure,
of the
and
week.
our heart goes
horrible.
out to that family and to that kid, and I hope this never comes up ever again in our sphere of reference. We're out of time, unfortunately. We're ending on an angry note.
I want to keep going.
I just want to say to any autistic kids out there, only let your friends use you for gambling.
What do you mean, everyone? See you guys.
You are listening to the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Upcoming shows to the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.
Welcome to FYI. It's Dimitri Young here with Robert Fick. Hey, everybody, welcome to Talking Marijuana.
Hi, everybody. Crabman's Rock and Roll Revival featuring Frazier Smith is on the air, in your hair, and going out everywhere around the world.
I'm Gary Garver, live from the John Lovitz Comedy Club.
This is the John Lovitz Vodcast Network.